let's try that again. Welcome to the Mesa City Council study session for May the 18th. Mr. Luna is excused and out of town on city business, functioning in his capacity as a committee chair for the League of Cities. Do we have Mr. Whitaker on the telephone?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, hi, Jeremy. Council member obviously is absent, and the topic of his absence is actually the first item on our agenda. I think we all know that Councilmember Winkle's recent arrest for suspicion for DUI has raised a lot of questions. There's been a lot of input, a lot of concerns expressed, and I would like to take this opportunity to inform the council and the public as to what the process is, what our city charter instructs us to do in situations where there's been allegations of council member misconduct. And certainly there was an immediate question that I think was answered yesterday, and that was relative to Mr. Winkle's interim status during this period while there's an investigation going on and the potential for criminal charges being filed by the Tempe City prosecutor. I think it's good to remind everyone what happened yesterday was a good thing. Mr. Winkle voluntarily suspended his council service for the time being. I endorse that. That was the right thing for him to do. But it is still, there are still questions present as to what are the next steps. And I just like to, at this point, encourage everyone to be a little bit patient. We need to avoid rushing to judgment in this situation. We need to respect one another's due process. I assure you the City Council takes this situation very seriously, and we will do the right thing. We will follow the charter. But that means that we are very deliberate in what we do. And so to help us understand that, not just the council, but the public and those who are Mr. Winkle's loyal supporters and those who are his ardent critics, we all need to just agree on what the facts are and what the process is. So for that reason, on our agenda today, the first thing is to hear from our good city attorney, Mr. Jim Smith. He'll give us an overview of what the charter instructs us to do in this situation. Again, because the urgency related to this having to do with Mr. Winkle's temporary status has been resolved as of yesterday, it's not contemplated that we're going to take any action today. And so for that reason, we won't be taking public comment on this topic today. I assure you that if this progresses, that the time will come that the public comment will certainly be a significant part of what we do. But that's not happening today. So Mr. Smith, please give us an overview of what we're looking at.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The Charter in Sections 206 and 207 sets out a process for disciplinating council members. The process begins in Section 207, and just sort of frame of reference, it's akin to the impeachment and conviction process that you see on the federal or state level. And so 207 sets out a similar process. It's obviously different because there's only one legislative body on the City Council. It sets out the two-step process. First, charges are brought, and that would be a hearing before council. And then second, disciplinary hearing that would follow after notice that's set forth within 207. And then at that hearing, and that's in Section 206 of the Charter, there's a number of options that council can make. It sets forth a litany, a list of different discipline that council can do, including forfeiture of office, suspension, censure, and so forth. And then it also details in a number of subsections the grounds for such discipline. And I won't repeat all of those. Those are all in 206. And so that process is set forth in Section 206 and 207. Then also 207 also states that council is the judge of the fitness of its members. And so ultimately, council then will make that determination. And let me follow up on also the voluntary suspension, because there is just a couple items that I want to talk about regarding that. And this has obviously evolved very quickly here this week. And there's a couple matters that need to be handled on that voluntary suspension. Specifically, it needs to be clear that the voluntary suspension does not limit council's future ability to take action under Section 206 or 207. And second, there's a question regarding whether or not those absences will be excused. And that's a question we need direction from council just this morning. And just so you know, within a document that has been prepared and what has been provided to Councilmember Winkle, we've embodied those concepts subject to direction on the excusing of absences for him to execute, so that it is very clear that it doesn't affect council's future ability to take action under Section 206 and 207, and also for him will add something regarding whether or not the absences will be excused during the suspension. Also, it'll be clear that the suspension doesn't affect council's ability to proceed in the future during the suspension. It doesn't sort of limit when you can move forward in the future at some time. And so this morning, I'd ask for direction regarding whether or not council is willing to excuse the absences during this voluntary suspension.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. So just to recap what he said very clearly, it doesn't need recapping, but the legal staff is working with Mr. Winkle to work out any details related to what the terms are of the interim suspension. Again, as I said earlier, I think the interim voluntary suspension is a good thing. I think it allows for us to conduct the business of the City Council without distractions related to that potential legal situation of his. And so I appreciate his voluntarily doing that, and I certainly would be in favor of excusing his absences during that period of time. But that's one point of view. How does the council feel? Are we okay with doing that?
Mayor, I'm very fine with that. I don't think we have all our facts in yet. Until that comes forth, then I'm okay with that. Thanks.
I'm on board as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, clearly there's a consensus that that's what we'd like to do. All right, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions or comments regarding Mr. Smith's presentation on the status of things? Okay, thank you very much. Again, if there were folks here that came hoping to give public comment on that, I apologize. I assure you that opportunity will be provided at the right time. The next item on our agenda is to review items on the agenda for the May 22nd regular council meeting. So let's take a look at that. The first few items are various liquor license applications. I have to say I'm personally pretty excited to see that we apparently have a new Korean restaurant coming to Mesa. Our item 4 is various purchase contracts.
I have a request to remove item 4L, the private jails, from the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. I should note that I know that we obviously have a larger than normal attendance today, and I know that's because there's a lot of interest in item 4L, the jail contract. So that certainly will come off the consent agenda. And at the conclusion of reviewing today's agenda, we will have a staff presentation from the police department about that item. And I do have several requests to speak, and I will be happy to hear from. We'll be happy to hear from those folks. So. No need to worry that we're not going to have a nice, robust discussion about private jails this morning, okay?
Mayor?
Yes.
Also, we'll need to remove item 4H off the agenda. We've received a protest on that item on the purchase of decals, so let's remove it from the agenda until we've completed that process.
Okay, item 4H will be off the consent agenda, having to do with the 3-year contract for vehicle decals. And then item 4L, the 3-year contract for private jail service will be off of the consent agenda as well. And we'll come back and discuss that in just a moment. Any other items on the purchase contracts? Agenda item 5 is various resolutions related to zoning cases. 6 is introducing ordinances for public hearings at a later date. And item 7 is a subdivision plat. Any questions or concerns? Item 9 is taking action on the tentative adoption of the 17-18 budget. And then items not on the consent agenda currently is to conduct a hearing regarding the assessment on the Mesa Town Center Improvement District and public hearings on utility rates. And then also a public hearing on the capital 5-year CIP for 18 through 22. So we're going to have a busy Monday. Any questions or concerns about anything on the agenda? So we've got 2 items out, well, several items that are not on the consent agenda, so we'll have a longer than normal meeting on Monday. All right, the next item on our agenda today then is to circle back to agenda item 4L. And Mr. Brady, are we going to get a staff presentation?
Yes, we'll invite the Chief Dvorak if he'll come forward with his staff to make the presentation, Mayor.
Welcome, Chief.
Good morning, Mayor Giles, members of council. Good morning. I'm Interim Police Chief Mike Dvorak, and we are here to provide a short presentation today on the jail services contract item. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the 2 co-presenters I have with me today. To my right is Commander Mike Beaton. He is responsible for our Metro Support Division, which includes our holding facility operations. And to my far right is Fiscal Manager Krista York. To begin, let me provide you with some background information related to our current holding facility and our jail services operation before I turn it over to Commander Beaton. Currently, in custody misdemeanor offenders who are arrested by Mesa police officers are held in the Mesa Police Holding Facility until their initial arraignment before a city magistrate. Those offenders that are subsequently directed to be kept in custody by the court are then transported by the detention staff to the MCSO facility in Phoenix. City of Mesa is then charged booking and housing fees by MCSO for those particular misdemeanor prisoners. Our current challenges to our operations are highlighted really by the following. Multiple daily transports to MCSO in Phoenix by our detention staff that frequently requires several hours of their time, in addition to travel time and wait time for the intake process. Additionally, they are also challenged by increased costs in our agency, the costs related to those booking and housing fees that are charged for the misdemeanor prisoners. So those are the highlights of our 2 particular challenges. So our project goals in response to these challenges were to establish opportunities to look at a few items. The first is to reduce our costs associated with booking and housing of misdemeanor offenders, to improve our operational efficiency by reducing transport times for our detention staff, thus allowing them to spend more time either in our holding facility or assisting with providing prisoner transport services to officers, particularly in East Mesa, which allows the police officers to stay in their assigned areas instead of requiring them to transport their prisoners downtown to our Mesa headquarters facility. So with that background, I will now turn the presentation over to Commander Mike Beaton, who has been working as the project lead on this particular case.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. First, I want to clarify some of the concepts in this contract. We'll be using this facility as a jail facility, not as a prison facility. We're talking short-term misdemeanor prisoners. We were able to average our stay for our inmates for 2016 last year, and we averaged approximately 6 to 10 days for the inmates that we had at Maricopa County. So also in reference to juveniles, this will not change our juvenile procedures in any way. Juveniles will not be housed at this facility. We worked with the Mesa City Court to clarify what their sentencing times were to verify that our average time of 6 to 10 days was accurate. They came up with their sentencing times, and it was 46% of our sentences were 9 days or under, and then 76% of our sentences were 29 days or under. So that verified that short-term stay. That's the people we're talking about here. We were able to conduct site visits. Several of you were able to attend these. I really appreciate that. It's much easier to show you these facilities than to try to describe them here in the council chambers. So one of the biggest goals of those site visits for me was to ensure that our inmates were going to get comparable or better treatment at this core civic facility than they are receiving now with Maricopa County. So, and I was satisfied that they would receive, they were comparable or better facilities that they would be attending. Just some background information about the Core Civic, the company, is they're the oldest privatized jail company in the United States with over 29 years of experience. And they also currently have a contract with 17 states, including Arizona, and 3 federal agencies to house inmates. Some information about the Florence facility that we visited. You can see the information up there about the number of beds they have and employees, but the area where the Mesa inmates will be housed is a separate area. It's our inmates will be kept sight and sound separate from other inmates. We've got approximately 160 beds for male inmates and 80 beds for female inmates. And then within there, with the female inmates, their area will have frosted glass, and they'll be kept separate from the male inmates, both sight and sound as well. They even have their own separate outdoor recreation area for that pod where they're going to be. As well, language is another important issue that we wanted to ensure was taken care of in case there's any non-English speaking inmates. They have a multilingual staff that works there, as well as if they can't speak the language, they have a contract with Language Line to ensure that that inmate's needs are met. Just to go over the terms of the contract, it's the first term is for a 3-year term with 1 2-year renewal. And then one of the insurances to make sure that our expectations are met is we have an out clause with, for any reason or for no reason, with written notice we can get out within 60 days. And then transportation, as the Chief Dvorak spoke about, transportation is an important part of this contract for us. Currently, we're in charge of transporting all our inmates down the county. This will turn the responsibility for transporting inmates over to Core Civic. So all misdemeanor inmates will be transported from Mesa to their Florence facility by Core Civic, freeing up our transport officers to go out and support our patrol officers. This will mean less time in the jail booking prisoners for our patrol officers, and therefore more time on the street protecting our citizens. So that's one of our goals. Rehabilitative services were also important to us to ensure that our inmates had access to those. At this Core Civic facility, they'll have access to multiple rehabilitative services, including behavior modification, anger management, including drug rehab, GED, adult basic education, among other things. So,
I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson.
Commander, does MCSO offer those same services right now at the 4th Avenue?
they do offer some of those, yes, sir.
Do they offer all of those?
I'm not sure what all they offer. I'm not sure if it's comparable. They offer a lot of those, if not all of those. I'm not sure exactly how they compare.
Okay. Mr. Freeman.
Commander,
Yes, sir.
when we take inmates to the county jail, misdemeanor or otherwise, do they intermingle with felony and type? Is it kind of a mixed, where people mix there, there's no separation of misdemeanor and felony?
In the intake, yes, they're
On
all
the intake
they're all
for
together.
MCSO?
Yes, sir.
So
They're
this
mixed
one will be
together.
separation of,
Yeah, we will separate them at our Mesa facility. Only misdemeanor inmates will be going to this facility. The felony inmates will not change. They will continue to go to MCSO.
thanks.
This facility also has a 24-hour medical services to include medical, dental, and psychological. Once we turn the inmates over to Core Civic, they will be responsible for any charges incurred by the inmates for medical issues.
Commander, I have a question
sir.
about that. In my discussions with the folks at the county, this was one of the points they were skeptical on as to whether or not a for-profit jail would accept. Well, let's say we've got somebody with a real medical situation. We take them to county. does the county say, wait a minute, no, we're not going to take this person because of the medical situation, or do they accept them and deal with the medical situation? But I guess first answer that and then compare that, what's going to happen in a similar situation with Core Civic if we've got someone with obvious medical issues?
With talking to Core Civic about medical issues, they didn't balk at all about dealing with any medical issues that we would give them. I would have to clarify, drill down on that a little bit more to ensure that, but in our initial talks and in the contract process, they had no issues with accepting medical-related issues with the prisoners. And with county, like I said, we've experienced times where our prisoners are frequently turned away for medical reasons. We have to take them to the hospital and get a medical clearance prior to bringing them back to the county facilities to get booked in. They have to have a piece of paper that says they're okay for booking. So.
Okay, so that does happen at county, where the
Yes.
county just says, sorry, this is too big of a medical situation, you go resolve that and then bring them back. And as far as Core Civic goes, they haven't indicated that they're anticipating doing that. I know that those of us that have toured both facilities are very proud of their medical facilities. And I was taken back, these are jails / hospitals, both of them. So it seems like they're well equipped to handle medical issues, but at least the county was saying, you know what, you guys need to ask some hard questions of Core Civic about medical situations, because we're skeptical that they're just going to take anybody who shows up regardless of their medical situation.
Right. I'll interject a little bit on the services, and certainly what's part of the contract requirements is 24-hour on-site services, similar to what we currently experience. And also they contract with multiple surrounding hospitals to provide those services as well. There's also a provision similar to today that if there is a large medical concern, that they consult with our department. We have a liaison with, would be with Core Civic, similar to county, that if perchance there is a significant medical issue, they can discuss whether that person gets released to get that medical care as well.
Okay. You know, I know Core Civic is present. I wonder if, that seems like I said, that one of the major questions that the county was encouraging us to look into. Could we invite someone from Core Civic to come up and tell us, and kind of help us know the answer to that question?
Yes, sir, we can. We've got Carlos Melendez from Core Civic. Are you available to come up and answer the question?
So Carlos, I think, welcome.
Thank you.
Have a seat. I'm sorry and I'm not sure if you were expecting to be grilled today, so I apologize. But Carlos, what happens if you're going to pick people up at our jail?
Correct.
And maybe we have a hard time getting somebody on the bus because of their medical situation. Or let's say we have someone that's in obvious medical distress. How are we going to handle that? Are you going to send a medical transport to pick them up? Or are you going to say, sorry, that person's in, resolve your medical issues and we'll be back later to get them?
In our experience dealing with this population, I do want to clarify a couple of things. First, it's a misdemeanor population. And the way the arrangement is drafted is that we will not move them to the Florence facility until after first arraignment or first appearance. So we're not going to intervene with the person until that process has been completed. So typically, if there's an emergent care, that's done prior to first appearance or first arraignment. At that point, we're sure that whatever care was given and provided, we will do the continuum of care from there. So that's why we're not as concerned, because if it's that emergent of a need, in our experience, you're not bringing that person in front of a judge until that is taken care of. And the way the contract is drafted, we do not accept the person until after first appearance or first arraignment. Any medical care from that point on or continuum care is on Core Civic.
Okay. And I assume if there was an obvious medical emergency, we're calling the ambulance and the medical providers rather than the Core Civic transport.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Freeman.
Mayor, thank you, Core Civic. I have the opportunity, being a former paramedic and knowing some of the medical terminology, I was able to visit with the medical staff at the facility and talk to the nurse practitioner. And they do have a nurse practitioner there on site, as well as nursing staff, to provide 24-hour care, because I asked if there were specific, say a person had a cardiac event crashed, had an MI, seizures, or head injuries of any type. They have the facilities and the equipment to handle that. And I grilled her a little bit, and we had a nice chat. But then in the need of transportation, they would call 911. The responding neighboring fire department would come, and then they would transfer care to them, therefore transportation to an ER off-site. So there'd be continuing medical care for the patient from the facility to the closest hospital there. I didn't have any problems with that. They seemed very capable of handling any type of emergency there.
And again, I think it helps to set the stage, the point that's been made here a couple of times. We're dealing with a more stable population, the misdemeanor folks that have already been arraigned. When you go to the Maricopa County Jail, you feel like you're in an emergency room. And to a large extent, you are. You're dealing with a very intense population. There's a lot of obvious medical issues going on there. But that's really not the population that we're anticipating for this contract. These are people that have already been arraigned, people that are low-level misdemeanor, folks that just need some housing for a few days, as opposed to people that are in crisis for the most part.
Mayor, if I can just maybe add one point that was mentioned to highlight that is, what is true is on the front end is where we see most of our medical issues. I mean, certainly after an arrest, we go through a medical questionnaire when they arrive at our holding facility. And if there's any medical needs, then typically we will address that, either go to a hospital there if we need to get a clearance, or we have certainly our Mesa Medical and Fire will come and provide assistance as well and do a medical assessment as well. So by the time they go and see the court in their arraignment process, get finished with that process, they've been through that intake area of our department as well. And then certainly that's when they're subject to the transport.
Okay, thank you.
And then,
I've got a question.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Go ahead.
Is Carlos still up there? I can't see from the camera angle.
Yes, sir.
Do you guys have jail contracts anywhere else in the country, or is this a first?
Jail contracts, no. We have some in Florida, Maryland, Indiana, Tennessee. We have several jail contracts.
So some of the feedback that I've been getting from people is that Core Civic is currently in the process of termination with some of those contracts because of mismanagement and cost overruns. Can you comment on that at all?
Cannot, not sure what you're speaking of, no, sir.
Okay. And are there any current lawsuits pending against Core Civic?
I'm sure there's something, but that's not an arena that I stay in.
Okay. And the last question I have you guys had any prisoners die in the Core Civic facility down there where the individuals will be held?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Have any prisoners died in the Core Civic facility where we'll be moving our prisoners?
I can definitely look at that. I don't want to comment on that the second without giving you accurate information.
I know that this is a very passionate issue, but just everybody's got to understand we don't speak out from the crowd. Everyone that wants to speak today will get a chance to do that, but we have some game rules here, and they include not disrupting the speakers. So please be respectful. I'm sorry, Jeremy, go ahead. Any other questions?
No, I didn't hear the response to the last question. I was just wondering if any prisoners have died down in that facility down in any level where we're going to be sticking our citizens.
Sir, could you respond to that again, please?
Sure, I would be more than happy to communicate that to the appropriate folks and get you some data on his question.
Great. And the last question I have is, how does the Core Civic, how do you guys make your profits?
How do we make? We partner with government to provide the best service we can. So from one is economies of scale. We are very large. So we take things like technology into place, our contracting. So when we contract for services such as food, it's on a much larger scale. Those are just a couple of examples.
So, I mean, it's safe to say that the more beds that you guys fill, the more profitable your business is.
The more, say that again?
The more beds you fill with prisoners, I'm assuming there's a direct correlation between that and your profit.
The larger we are, the more we can level the economies of scales. That is correct.
And how many registered federal lobbyists do you guys have over at Core Civic?
I have no idea, sir.
All right. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy. You know, if you don't mind, just as long as Jeremy has raised some questions that there's been, as you can imagine, a lot of emails that have come to the council. I've tried to get through most of them, but a lot of them kind of center around some of the questions that that Jeremy was asking. There were some allegations in these emails that the Eloy facility has had unusual or numbers of deaths or complaints. Now, I understand we're not anticipating using the Eloy facility. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But it would be, if you don't mind, Monday, this will be off the consent agenda. There'll be another opportunity for questions to be asked and answered. And I think I would appreciate a follow-up on
Absolutely.
Jeremy's question about, you know, how many people have died in this facility? Now,
Specifically, the Florence Correctional Center.
yes, and then also the general allegation that the Eloy facility, for some reason, has an unusual number of deaths.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's true, but if you could just tell us if that's true or not.
Sure.
And then, of course, out of fairness, I mean, a jail population is a high-risk population. I know for a fact there's been many deaths. I shouldn't say many. There's been deaths in the Maricopa County facility. So I'm not sure that is how critical a statistic that is. But still, out of fairness, the question was asked, and I'd look forward to you responding to it.
And I want to circle back to how we started, which is the classification of the population is very important to understand the demographics of that population. And
Sure, it would be very interesting to know in other places where you've been doing jail as opposed to prison, and is that a misdemeanor population that you're dealing with? And if so, what's the frequency of serious incidents involving death and severe allegations of unconstitutional treatment, in a misdemeanor population?
sure.
Okay. Gentlemen, questions? Mr. Thompson?
Commander, I asked one of the lieutenants a while back, and I already know the answer, but for other people to understand what the general population of a misdemeanor is, can you tell everyone what the majority of your misdemeanor crimes are?
There's various. You got the domestic violence, disorderly conduct, shoplifting. It just depends. They're like I said, the lower level crimes, and the maximum allowable sentence under Arizona Revised Statute for a misdemeanor is a 6 months sentence is the maximum. So.
Thank you. I'm sorry, is there more to your presentation?
A couple more. So.
Thanks.
Continuing on, visitation was important to us to ensure that was allowed. So we're going to be able to conduct visitation on site, as well as Core Civic's going to install video visitation we're looking right now at the lobby of the police station. So family members can come and instead of driving to the Core Civic facility, actually just have video visitation. An important part of our quality control was the right to inspect their facilities. We can inspect at any time. We plan on inspecting weekly for the first 6 months. And then after that, as long as everything's going smoothly, monthly for the duration of the contract. And then we will also have real-time online access to all of our inmate records at Core Civic. They're going to install a computer so you have access to all inmate records while they're at Core Civic.
This slide before you is one you've seen previously, but we wanted to highlight again just the pricing comparison for the last 4 years. The inmates booked and inmates housed are coming directly off of our jail bill. And as you can see, the variance between what we have been charged with the county compared to what we would have been charged and what we're projecting to be charged with Core Civic is widening over the years. For next fiscal year, we are looking at a $2+ million savings by going into this contract with Core Civic. These numbers do include the $35,000 transportation fee as well as the highest housing rate per Core Civic's contract.
Okay, let's talk about the housing rate for just a second, because again, a recurring theme in the opposition to this is what's been called perverse incentive. And I think it's the issue that Jeremy alluded to earlier, which is that there's an incentive to the more people that Core Civic gets, the more profits they make, and so they may try to influence local government or judges or federal sentencing guidelines to increase their bottom line by encouraging us to send more people to jail. In fairness, I don't quite get that, because we have the opposite incentive. The less people we send to Core Civic, the less money we pay to Core Civic. But is there something built into this contract, some sort of well, hey guys, if you can just send us a few more, a month, we'll give you a better rate? Is there something that could be fairly or unfairly characterized as a perverse incentive to encourage us to send more people to jail?
In the contract, as was mentioned by just previously here, is that we use the most conservative estimate in ours, and that's the highest rate that is in the contract. There are different levels based on number of inmates and prisoners where the rate would change. We use that calculation at the highest end. Also, it also fits within, if you look at our average inmates that are listed there, it is within the rate of what would be one of the lowest rates in terms of incarceration, but it's within the parameters of that particular setting. So what it allows is the ability for us to track. As you can see, the historical, our average inmates housed per day, we have a good 4-year history. We could see and certainly report back in future years, is there any change to that rate? Now, our policies here in Mesa, for instance, on booking or arresting have not changed and do not change. So certainly our practices will remain the same. And so I think that's an important factor, and we certainly we're on the front end of that, so what we arrest is based on certainly our standards, and those standards have been consistent and will remain that going forward.
And Mayor, I'll just say this, no time is there any discussion between city management and the police department about trying to dictate their decisions on how they enforce the law, or any discussions with the municipal courts about sentencing as it relates to any individual who breaks the law in Mesa as it affects the budget. The only time we've had discussions is the question is, how much is our budget going to go up from anticipating the increases from the county, and how are we going to manage that inside the budget? And whether or not the number of arrests from one year to the next, how that affects our end of the day number. But there never at any time is there any discussion one way or the other about affecting our ability to enforce the laws or any sentencing that goes on. Matter of fact, there's no discussions on the magistrate side on any of that. That's never come up in my over 10 years of the city, with never discussion. Right. I don't expect that to ever happen going forward.
And I could say that I've had plenty of discussions just the opposite. Judge Tafoya, I think, is very proud of the fact that the Mesa Municipal Court does everything it can to reduce the number of people that they send to jail. Between diversion programs, between house arrest programs, they are on a crusade to send less people to jail. And I think if you look at this contract, correct me if I'm wrong, under no circumstances do we make less money, do we pay less money by sending more people to jail? The opposite is always true. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I would like to invite maybe Judge Tafoya to come Monday and just to give us a general statement about, Judge, are we trying to, put more, like the $3 billion served, up on the court, or are we trying to reduce?
The diversion programs that we have, yeah.
What are we doing to send less people to jail, I think would be the question for Judge Tafoya. Mr. Thompson.
I'd like to clarify.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry. Yeah, so the only point that I'm trying to make is that, I don't necessarily think that there's any incentives that are going to be provided to the city to send more people to prisons. My concern is that the lobbyists are going to come into the city and start donating tens of thousands of dollars to city council candidates. And then we're going to be back in a position where city council is creating laws and other things to create stricter laws to send more people into the jail. So that's my concern. We've seen the effect that lobbyists can have on our council previously, and that's one of my deepest concerns with this issue, just to clarify my position.
Okay, understood. And the only thing I would, and you, Jeremy, you and I have had this conversation, and it's a good conversation to have. If you look at our council agenda, there's 3 or 4 pages of contracts of the city buying stuff from people that lobby us to sell it to us. And so jail services is in good company, you know, along with everything else that we do and that we pay money for in terms of, yes, people come here and try to sell us stuff. So I don't know that we can insulate this from the way we do every other piece of business. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you hit on exactly what I was going to say, is that our courts are looking to actually reduce the number of our citizens that end up in jail. One of the things that I had a conversation with Supervisor Chukri yesterday, and he would like us to, even going forward, to continue to work with MCSO to see if we can come up with comparable rates for using MCSO services. And so I'm glad that we have the 60-day out, if written out, if we so choose to go that route. But merely work with Sheriff Penzone, and let's see if we can get their rates to be comparable. And we have a really great relationship right now with MCSO. So I would be, at the end of the day, if the pricing doesn't fit, then the pricing doesn't fit. But I think it's we've had a long time relationship, and I think we at least they at least deserve to see if they can match the pricing or do better. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, are we still in the middle of your presentation, folks?
Very last slide, last
Okay.
thing, so this is it.
Thank you.
We mentioned several times in the contract, the American Correctional Association. This is an accredited facility. They passed through the latest accreditation with a 99% rate. We just wanted to show some of the specificity that they talk about in this accreditation. And we have copies of all the accreditation, but it's about 394 pages of accreditation if anyone wants to read that. So that was our last thing.
Chief.
Let me just add one point of clarification to the comments, just because you got diluted a little in the conversation. But the average number of inmates housed, I mean, the booking rate that we have used for this calculation is certainly the most conservative. Certainly the average number of inmates is that, if that was large numbers, there is a rate decrease that goes along with that. First, in the calculations, though, we have used a number that's the most conservative for a reason, is that we have been below that ceiling number, if you will, below 200 for many times. And if you look at that chart that was up just previously, you can see how our booking and inmate average of inmates has decreased over the last 3 years. And kind of demonstrative of what we were talking about with the court's efforts, as well as certainly our standards being unchanged. So we're certainly not seeing an increase, and we're not seeing any changes to our practices, and that's supported by those numbers as well.
Okay. Thank you. The last slide that you showed having to do with the certifications, and again, I'd asked this question in no way intending to be critical of Maricopa County, but I believe the last sheriff was not interested in pursuing certifications. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but Maricopa County Jail does not have the certifications the federal American Correctional Association certifications that this facility does. Is that correct?
This is a voluntary accreditation. You voluntarily have to go to this association, have them come in and accredit you. And what we were told was they currently don't have this accreditation.
And so the Florence facility is accredited by the ACA, and as well as it's built to federal standards. The other inmates that will be there will be U.S. Marshals and ICE inmates. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. Other questions, council? If not, yes, Chris.
On Monday, can you find out how many deaths have happened at county jail? And also, do we have the right to go and inspect the county jail?
So, Mayor and council members, certainly I'll look into that number if I can obtain that from MCSO. Currently, no, we do not have inspection rights. It's a MCSO facility, and once our prisoners are delivered, they're in their care and custody. And so a lot of the provisions in this particular contract actually give us that ability to do the inspections and the oversight that we currently don't have dealing with MCSO.
How responsive have they been in working with you during this process?
I talked with Sheriff Penzone, prior to our initial presentation, and I will tell you, a reflection is we have a great working relationship with MCSO on an operational level, always and still do. Certainly, the rates are set by the Board of Supervisors in this regard, and so he doesn't have direct ability to affect that, and certainly he's looking for opportunities to work down the road to hopefully provide different rates to the various municipalities. But our relationship has been good. They have been responsive to when we have talked to them throughout, and really that relationship is pretty solid.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to hear from the public now. That might prompt some additional questions, but we appreciate the great presentation. And it's probably good to know, Chief, how long has this police department been working on this proposal?
Conceptually, it started, many years ago. We put out the RFP in 2012, is when we went out for the original RFP process. We have been then fine-tuning and looking at all the various elements of this. It's obviously a very complex process, a lot of moving parts to it, and so a lot of thought and care went into looking at to ensure that we had the good information to base really where we're heading and to see if there was opportunity there. And certainly we've relied on that. So it's been really carefully done throughout.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, now we do have several cards. There are some ground rules for this. Obviously, we need to get through this as expeditiously as possible, but we're anxious to get public comment on this. So I'm just going to start at the top. The ground rules are, please give us your name and your address, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Okay? So we're going to start with Heather Hamill. Heather, please come up and take a seat behind one of the microphones. Do we still have Heather? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Gotcha.
Hello, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Heather Hamill. I'm here as Executive Director of Justice That Works, and urging you to oppose the privatization of your jail facility. There are numerous reasons why, but I wanted to start out by countering and correcting and providing some of the information that CoreCivic couldn't provide you. When asked directly whether or not there had been any deaths at the Eloy facility, I find it very interesting that they refused to answer that question, particularly because if you do a simple Google search into Eloy deaths, you'll see headline after headline of another death, another suicide. Federal immigration is opening an investigation into the Eloy facility because it has the most deaths of any other facility in the country. It also has high rates of sexual assault. And this is not uncharacteristic of other facilities across the country, and particularly in Arizona. This has been a problem that both the state and federal government and local activist groups have been looking at in Arizona for quite some time. Starting with the ADOC per capita operating cost report, which was one of the first looks into what are actually the costs of private facilities and do they cost less? And over a 3-year period, what they ended up finding, even accounting for other variables such as differences in inmate populations and site-specific needs, that the state was overpaying about $10 million for private facilities. There have also been, they also found that overall, and this is something that you can find in the Office of Inspector General reports that were just released last year by the federal government, and then also numerous reports here in Arizona, that for-profit facilities are generally less safe, that there's higher incidence of sexual assault, there's higher incidence of assaults both on inmate upon inmate and also staff upon inmates. One of the reasons is because there is a higher turnover of staff at these private facilities. There's minimal training and often lower pay. And for example, in the Kingman facility in 2010, when there were riots and ADOC came in and did an inspection, they found that 80% of the staff at that time had been new due to high turnover rate. As a matter of fact, there have been multiple riots in the Kingman facility. in 2010, in 2015, in 2016. And then there are also, I would urge you not only to look at the immigration facilities in Eloy that CCA runs, but also its Red Rock Correctional Facility, where it houses individuals from the state of Hawaii. In 2010, Hawaiian prisoners sued CCA, alleging that the guards, quote, stripped, beat, and kicked inmates and threatened to kill them, banged their heads on tables while they were handcuffed, and the warden himself joined in threatening their families.
Thank you, Heather. That's your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Next, Gilbert Romero. No. Gilbert, we know your name, but could we please have your address? Thank you.
Mayor and Council, my name is Gilbert Romero. My address is 10218 North 88th Drive, Peoria. Mayor and Council, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I'm here to urge you all to oppose the privatization of your jail facilities. I think Heather Hamill mentioned a lot of good reasons why this is not a good idea. I think Mesa has an opportunity right now to be leaders in the entire state to refuse to allow the privatization of your jails. Again, I'm kind of concerned that CoreCivic, formerly known as CCA, failed to mention with a simple Google search, you all can find that there's been multiple deaths. Specifically, my main concern as an organizer and activist with Living United for Change in Arizona, also known as Lucha, the way they treat undocumented folks in the detention centers in Eloy. It's very concerning. The amount of sexual assault that has been going on, that has been reported in all the jail facilities, is extremely concerning. And the dehumanization specifically of transgender people in Eloy who are incorrectly put in the wrong jail cells has a tremendous effect on people's mental health. And so I know that CoreCivic does not have a history of being able to treat their prisoners humanely and with respect. I think this would cause Mesa more headaches down the road than it would benefits of any supposed cost savings. I think this would give you all a harder time, considering this would be the first city in the state of Arizona to have a privatized jail system. So I urge you all to oppose this. I think this would cause more problems than it does save you money. I think the cost-benefit analysis definitely you should oppose this measure. And again, I think Mesa is in a position to be a leader in this and to say no to the privatization of our government, the privatization of our jail facilities. So I urge you all to oppose this measure, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gilbert. Carolyn Connor.
Morning, Mayor Giles.
Good morning.
Councilman, thank you. My name is Carolyn O'Connor. I live at 436 West Navarro, Mesa, District 18. I have some serious concerns about private prisons. These concerns can be grouped into 4 basic categories: safety, cost, accountability, ethics/values. Private prisons make their profits by winning contracts. There was a question asked this morning on how do you cut costs. This is how they cut costs. Largely in staff, they pay less than states or Federal Bureau of Prisons. Poor benefits, offer minimal staff training, which can leave employees frustrated and unprepared to handle crisis. As a result, these facilities frequently have high turnover rates, are chronically understaffed. The combination of these factors not only produce a difficult work environment, it can also make facilities generally unsafe for staff, inmates, and the community. Here are some examples of what goes on in these prisons: riots, fights, assaults, other disturbances. Currently, there are for-profit prison staff that are being investigated, arrested, charged, and convicted of criminal acts, including smuggling drugs, other contraband, sexual assault, and sexual relations with prisoners, including minors, accepting bribes and payback. Escapes, as well as accidental releases of prisoners through clerical error mismanagement, financial improprieties, and labor violations, negligence, and abuse. Take a look at what happened in Arizona. Here are some examples. In Marana, the first year of operation, everything went wrong. In the first 10 months of operation, they went through 4 wardens, 2 assistant wardens, 3 business managers, 2 security chiefs. This high turnover was attributed to the fact that salaries are 18% lower than the state employees earn. The company's own security chief estimated that the prison was 75% out of compliance with safety inspections. We've also alluded to the Kingman facilities, where Several riots occurred. 3 escapees had been convicted of serious violent crimes, including murder, while on the run. They kidnapped 2 drivers, forced them at gunpoint to drive them to another state where they engaged in a shootout with police. It's also believed they killed an elderly couple in New Mexico. They were able to escape due to lack of security system, including, and I love this one, a faulty alarm system that went off so regularly, everybody just simply ignored it. The Florence Correctional Institution, which we alluded to, had in the early 2000s, was discovered that a prison gang was effectively running the prison. Monitors reported lack security, widespread drug smuggling, assaults, and rioting. According to the Bureau of Justice Assistance, prisoner-on-prison assaults in private prisons was 66% higher than in public prisons, and 49% for profits for prisons, and 49% higher in prisons for profits. Look, Mesa is a city known for strong family values. Is this what you want? And there's a new sheriff in town. Be a good neighbor. Try to work with Penzone, try to work with the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Carolyn.
And see if you can come
Those
to
are
some
your 3
agreement.
minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Diane Post.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Diane Post. I'm a lawyer. My address is 1826 East Willetta, Phoenix. I'm also the coordinator of the Central Arizona National Lawyers Guild. I have a bachelor's in corrections. I did my master's thesis on people in prison. I've worked on the issue against for-profit prisons for the last 6 years. This is a bad idea because they are inefficient, ineffective, and immoral. They are inefficient because they cost more. Study after study has shown this. Not only do they cost more, but there are hidden costs both to the government and to the society. A most recent study came out showing that for every dollar spent by the government in these contracts, $10 is lost to society through expenditures by the family, by the prisoner, and by other societal areas. So you need to look at the broader picture and the longer picture. Secondly, they're ineffective. Generally, they have fewer programs, and they have the same or higher recidivism rates, and they have horrible conditions in treatment, including medical treatment, and this has been verified over and over again by lawsuit after lawsuit in state after state. Some states, they have evicted them from the state completely because of their repeated failures. Third, and maybe most important, is it's immoral. Making profit off another person's misery, making bodies a commodity in the stream of commerce. We have a name for that. It's called slavery. We did it before, it was a bad idea then, and it's a bad idea now. Now, this perverse incentive that you talked about, it's not you. Obviously, the city wants to put fewer people in jail and save money. That's not what the corporation wants. The perverse incentive is there, and that's why they have hundreds of lobbyists and spend millions of dollars to get these contracts. Now, you mentioned the fact that you have other lobbyists who work on other contracts, and that's true. However, jail and criminal justice is a different issue, because the government is the only agency that has the power to take away someone's freedom and put them in jail. That's not the same thing as building a sewer line or staffing a transportation company. It's a different thing, taking away someone's freedom. That is a government responsibility that should not be turned over to a for-profit corporation. I'm happy to provide any of the research that you might want to back up any of these statements that I and some of the other people have made. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Jay Gitrich.
Good morning. My name is Jay Gitrich, and I live at 2940 East Broadway Road, 119. I'm in City Council District Number 2. My biggest concern, this is too much of a good deal for Core Civic. I think that basically they're going to go ahead and bid low, and we're going to get more additional costs down the road that we're not really planning for. I think that Sheriff Penzone is willing to work with us and to lower the costs. I think one of the other biggest problems is we're short on officers, and this is a way to deal with that situation, but I think this is a bad solution to that. The other thing is that I was hearing that the transportation cost from the East Valley is much higher to transport prisoners to downtown Mesa. My next concern is that you, that basically, this is just a bad idea. It's bad for the city of Mesa, and it will cost us more money than that's set out in the contract. So that's my biggest objection, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you,
And
Jay.
Thank you for talking.
Thank you very much. Next is Beth. I apologize for mispronouncing your last name, Beth. Hauk? Hauk. Thank you, Beth.
Yes, my name is Beth Hauk. I live at 804 West Pampa Avenue in Mesa. I am also here to speak against the private jail contract. I know Mesa prides itself in talking to its constituents, community groups that are maybe involved in actions that the city council, you know, you have all these advisory boards and things, and I'm concerned that no one spoke with your defense community. You have defense attorneys that are contracted to be public defenders in your courts. I am a defense attorney. I'm retired from the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office. There are issues such as work release. Prisoners, jail inmates, like for DUI, they get work release. It is much farther. I made some calculations how far it is from Mesa to Florence. The statute only allows 12 hours out of jail, and for most people in Mesa, it's at least a 1-hour commute from Florence. And it's closer from downtown Phoenix. You know, it depends where you live in Mesa, but it's pretty much a lot farther to Florence. They also get 2-for-1 credit if they're able to get a job inside the jail. I don't know that the Officer or Commander Beaton, he said that we're looking for comparable or better treatment, yet when asked if the same services were available, he said he didn't know if they were comparable. So it concerns me that no one, you know, you say you're looking for comparable or better, but you haven't even looked into whether you actually have that. And one of the things would also be the 2-for-1 release credit. It's much farther for attorneys to go visit their clients. A private attorney can sure just charge their client more, I suppose, but that means if you live in Mesa, you have to pay more to be defended. People that you contract with for public defense services, all their other clients are in downtown Phoenix. So it's, even though you say, well, it's not that far to Florence, it's still a special trip, probably for 1 or 2 people when everybody else is at the other location. So I'm opposed for the other reasons that I believe it's a public duty to take care of its inmates and shouldn't be turned over to private business for humanitarian safety reasons, accountability, oversight. I don't think you have calculated how much this accountability and oversight is going to cost you. It doesn't cost you when Maricopa County is doing it because they do it and people have access to them because they're public. You know, we know how to address conditions in Maricopa County jails. Attorneys do that all the time. This is a private institution where it's largely hidden from us. So if you are not providing the oversight, then nobody is. And if you should be including that in your costs, rather, you know, that it's not going to save you that much money if you're doing a good job of it.
Thank you, Beth. I think some of those points have been addressed, but Commander, the work release issue is something that, if you don't mind, on Monday, if you could address, I think we'd all appreciate it. Yes, sir. Carolyn Isaacs.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Caroline Isaacs, 1426 North Jones Boulevard, Tucson, Arizona. I'm here representing the American Friends Service Committee. Our office here in Arizona has been looking at the for-profit prison industry in Arizona for over 15 years and nationwide. And so I am hoping to provide you with some of the due diligence on this contract from the research that we've been doing over those years on their performance here in Arizona and elsewhere. First of all, I applaud you for having this conversation. Way too many municipalities or states just look at the numbers and sign the contract and do not do the true due diligence on these contracts and later come to regret it. 3 minutes is not enough to tell you why this is a bad idea, but you do have 4 pieces of paper from me on various issues related to the proposed contract, and I'm also happy to provide you with the background materials that those came from. They're all cited in terms of the public documents that we used. But in short, what you're looking at here is an unprecedented, dangerous experiment. So the CoreCivic rep was asked about their jail contracts. Currently, out of 47 contracts that they have to manage or run facilities nationwide, 5 of those are for jails. And they are in the process now of losing 2 of those 5. The D.C. jail in Washington, D.C., which I believe previously I'd sent you an assessment of the situation there, and I'm happy to provide that again. And also, a mayor in a town in Indiana has recently announced that he is looking to take back the jail there due to the problems that they've seen in that facility, including cost savings. Despite their claims that they can operate these facilities more cheaply, the mayor's administration estimates that eliminating the private contract would save them $16.5 million a year. But really, the decision came after a series of scandals in that facility, including many drug overdoses caused by serious problems with contraband, in which the local sheriffs actually had to do a raid on a private facility in their own community to take care of that problem. CoreCivic has a terrible track record in all of the areas that have been outlined in the proposed contract. Transportation in particular, I implore you to take a good look at. That has actually been the subject of several exposés recently. It's a national industry, right? Shipping prisoners from one place to another. CoreCivic has a wholly owned subsidiary called TransCore that has had serious problems, and one of the documents that I provided you with today specifically speaks to those issues, including unsafe conditions, including people dying in their custody during transport, escapes, where basically the driver parks at the Wendy's and everybody jumps out and runs away. And in that case, it is very important for you to know that CoreCivic is not going to go track down those people in your neighborhoods. That cost, again, is going to come back on your sheriff, on your police department, to go and find those escaped prisoners in your community. Sexual assault has been mentioned. Of course, transport is a very ample opportunity for people to take advantage of that situation. TransCore, their transportation agency, has seen numerous problems, including federal lawsuits over sexual assault of women in their custody, and also accidents and crashes. Medical care is another one that's been spoken to. There is a host of information I can provide you about the numerous lawsuits against CoreCivic over
Thank you,
medical
Carolyn.
neglect.
That's your 3 minutes. I realize you have a lot more to say.
I
but
do, and I would
thank
be
you.
very happy to provide you with any information. Thank you for looking into these issues.
Thank you very much. Orlando Green Bush.
Good morning. I'm O.L. Greenbush. I live at 2121 West Main Street here in Mesa. I'm not as astute as all my other personnel that have came up, but I want to get into this basically starting from 2012. I'm sure you all are aware that allegedly I haven't did the research to vet this story about private prison suing Arizona because they dropped below a 97% incarceration rate. That was a $16 million lawsuit that was filed against the state of Arizona. State of Arizona settled with $3 million to kind of negotiate the contract again in order to, I guess, get under the $16 million. This was a story that was published in the Huffington Post. If you have not seen that, everybody's using Google. I use DuckDuckGo, and you can find this information out there. Again, you know, I'm not for or against the privatization of the jail. However, I'm here today just to have you all be called personally to task on this issue, that you should take a personal stake in your evaluation of this process and this contract to make sure there are no, what they call the prisoner quotas. Accountability is the other thing. Most times in these prisons, we have accidents, we have deaths, injuries that the private prisons are not held accountable for. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how the culpability goes, but today I would stand here to say that you all do have some culpability if you sign this contract not assuring that you have all the due diligence and responsibilities and accountabilities taken into consideration. Mesa is a thriving community. The cultural, the artistic, intelligence, and educational facilities here are great. So we're poised to do a lot of things in the state of Arizona as a whole, but I would hate to see that it would be marred by your decision of lack of due diligence, lack of research, lack of balls, if I might be able to use that, in order to evaluate these contracts with private prisons. And like you've heard all the other people talk about all the bad things, I would like to say that we need to evaluate what our police officers and law enforcement need to do in order to do their jobs a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently. If it's more men on the street, we need to get that. If we need more administrative personnel, we need to do that. Because one outweighing the other, where we need human resources that could combat having to use a private system, where we've seen the several failures on one hand, and then all we need to do is add a little bit more education and training, a little bit more budget and dollars that you guys can evaluate to make sure our law enforcement have what they need. I'm for that. I don't like the atrocities that I heard, and in my capacity as a Veterans Masonic Services intake individual, I have heard an individual story out of a man that was incarcerated in Hawaii who's housed here in Arizona, whose mother had not heard from him in several months, started to call the prison, started to send letters to the warden and so forth. That son was moved to isolation. He had been in isolation for over 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Greenbush.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I still hold you
you.
personally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. You're not alone. J.J. Johnson.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. My name's J.J. Johnson. I am the president of the Black Phoenix Institute. We are a civil rights organization in Phoenix, but we work throughout the state. I am opposed to privatization in all cases. There are many questions that have to be answered, and the first of them that I have is the Arizona State retirement system is incredibly opaque as to what they are actually invested in. I would guess, I have good reason to believe that they are heavily invested in Core Civic in the mid-cap fund. So whether or not you can privatize, I have some questions about whether or not that raises questions about conflict of interest and self-dealing. As far as this privatization, spending $5 million a year with Core Civic when that directly benefits your pension plans. The next question I have is liability. When you are sued for something that happens to, and not if, but when, you're sued for something that happens to a prisoner that is in Core Civic's custody, the city of Mesa, not Maricopa County, will be on the hook for that. And that's something that you need to look at very carefully. It is well known and well documented that there is an arrest disparity in the city of Mesa for African Americans versus all other races combined. I would direct your attention to a USA Today story from 2014. It's an interactive story. It allows you to put in the state of Arizona and then the city of Mesa. You'll see that African Americans are arrested at a rate of 333 per 1,000 residents versus 107 for all other races combined. So by extension, you will be incarcerating more African Americans and placing the onus of putting African Americans in this private prison facility. That's certainly something you need to examine. Core Civic is rebranding because of 800 federal lawsuits. I would urge this council to contact the Idaho Department of Corrections and see why they divorced themselves from Core Civic. I have a lot more, and we'll be seeing you Monday evening. But I would really like an answer as to how deeply your pension plans are invested in Core Civic before going any further.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wells.
I have a comment. Could I make one comment, John?
Sure, Jeremy.
Is there somebody from staff that is taking notes that can follow up on all these issues? I mean, quite frankly, I'm surprised that, I mean, this is the first that I've heard of a lot of these issues. And I would have assumed that we would have done a lot more vetting in this process prior to. Like, the fact that, does anybody from staff have numbers on the amount of deaths that have occurred in this facility? That surprises me if we can't answer that question.
Well, I know we asked Core Civic to come prepared to discuss that on Monday, and I see he's not. They're nodding their heads now. So just again to remind everybody where we're at. We're going over what the agenda is going to be for Monday's meeting, and I think this is a great dress rehearsal for what's going to happen upstairs on Monday, and so hopefully Core Civic will come prepared to discuss that question. The question having to do with Arizona State retirement investments, you know. I'm not sure that we're going to have a good answer for you on that. Frankly, I think that's different from the PSPRS, where Public Safety Retirement System, where all of the folks who did the work on this, where their retirement is. It's separate from the elected official retirement system. But it might.
None of which we have any.
None of which we have any clue how they invest their money.
They're all appointed separate boards.
So we're going to disappoint Mr. Wells on Monday, not knowing the answer to that question. But Jeremy, any other specifics that you would like to have staff respond to before or at Monday's meeting?
No, I think that everybody has already brought up all of the points. So yeah, I just like to get more information on the process of vetting this organization and some of the other claims and allegations that are being made against them in other states and other municipalities. Like, that seems to be a major concern, so I'd like to know the history there.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll talk about the deaths, but frankly, I haven't heard any numbers from the folks that are raising that. They just say, trust us, there's a lot. I mean, that's not particularly definitive. So hopefully both sides will come prepared with more facts on Monday. All right, that's all the cards that we have. I've got more to say about this, but I'll save it for Monday.
I'm Mr. Wells. I don't think you borrowed my card.
Oh, I apologize, Mr. Wells. My mistake. Please come forward. I thought that that I had done that. Excuse me. Dave Wells. Sorry, I didn't mean to overlook yours.
That's okay. You were mentioning me. That was okay. Yeah. Mayor and Council, my name is Dave Wells. I reside at 3023 South Carriage Lane in Mesa. My son is currently on probation, so it's not without, and he's back in my house and I'm trying to work with him, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility that your decision on this could affect my family directly. I was a bit surprised. I mean, the way for-profit institutions work is they have to keep costs down. You know what their revenue is going to be. You don't know how they're keeping their costs down. I would implore you to contact those 5 jail facilities, including the one in Indiana and DC. They're cutting off their contracts to find out a little bit more about what the actual details are going on for it. I also have a concern that you'll be cost shifting to other cities. I used to live in Tempe, and their fixed cost is running a jail. And if you're removing your variable input into it, it's going to transfer costs to Tempe, Gilbert, and other places that are continuing to use the Maricopa County facilities. My son currently does have a job at a fast food place, and from what he's told me, they are breaking the law. But the point is that you're supposed to have inspections here, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to have inspections, but are they going to be unannounced? Because if you have announced inspections, then you can clean up a place and make sure everything looks nice for everybody. If they're unannounced inspections, then you have much more likely to find things that might not be in compliance. And as a member of the public, I would like to be able to know what those inspections are. I like to see them, meaning are they going to be publicly available in some way, fashion, or form? Also, on employee training, I think one of the concerns that we have with a private prison or private jail, in this case, cases are issues of training. Obviously, taking care of these folks actually requires a lot of training. Your police officers have a great deal of training, but the question is, what kind of training do these folks have? And if they have very high turnover rates, are they really prepared to do it? When you have these assaults and so forth, it's often because folks don't know what they're doing. They're not properly trained. Finally, I just want to implore you to continue to explore diversion. I think diversion is a very important thing. It's what your ultimate end goal with all of these things to do is to try to get folks back on a good path. And sometimes jail is actually not the most productive thing for somebody. A lot of these people need lots of assistance in being able to better manage their lives or their drug issues and so forth. And some of your diversion programs, I would implore you to continue when the judge is there on Monday to also ask them about ways you might continue to expand diversion, because that's a win-win. It should be winning for the folks who are in custody as well as for the city itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Okay, that concludes the public comment. Council, is there any other comment or discussion on this item? Obviously, we'll continue this upstairs on Monday. Okay, the next item on our agenda for this meeting then is agenda item 3A, which is to hear a presentation and discuss an update of the Downtown Mesa Association. Please don't be offended that everyone is getting up and walking out when you come to give your presentation. That's a good thing, actually.
There you go. Go ahead and click on it. Right here. There you go.
Good morning or good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We're excited to present to you today. I'm David Short, Director of the Downtown Mesa Association, and with me is our Board Chair, Lisa Peterson. I know some of you have seen elements of this presentation and you have a long meeting, so we will run through it very quickly. Stop me if you have any questions. Been serving downtown for over 31 years, the first business improvement district in Arizona, representing over 475 property owners and 400 businesses. Our budget is made up of the assessment that the property owners pay and the self-assessment the city does for the property they own in the downtown area, and then the contracts to manage the public space, parking and parking enforcement. Our four main duties are public space maintenance, parking management, marketing and promotion and events. I probably say the least about the maintenance in this presentation, but it's our shining star. It's kind of the main thing that DMA was founded to do. We have a crew of 4 that are out 6 days a week. We manage over 5,000 hours of community service workers to clean up and maintain the square mile. Manage 16 lots, 6,000 parking spaces, close to 10,000 permits. Marketing's kind of the smallest portion of our budget of what we do, but we really try to strategically use that to the best of our ability, and really focusing on that the last couple years with the new logo, tagline, and really we're able to get the merchants involved in the process to adopt this logo. Have reached over 4 million in our digital campaigns that we've done. Social media is something we're continuing to build on, and it's a great tool to reach the community and promote Downtown Mesa. So we've reached over 8 million digitally and had over 181,000 in website views the last year. We still do the traditional print materials, downtown brochures, sculpture guides, dining guides, posters, and flyers. Some of our ad campaigns that we do in certain publications, magazines, utilize the City of Mesa utility bills. And then we run the banner program in downtown Mesa along Main Street and Center. Currently, we have the Hometown Heroes and the flag banners up for Memorial Day coming up. And we also update the kiosks. We're currently getting ready to do that. We are looking for a new application. You may have noticed that the materials inside currently aren't holding up that well due to the weather, so we're working to make those look a little nicer than they currently do. We run a Downtown Dollars and gift card program that does over 36,000 in sales. Operate property availability on our website, which is searchable. So all the properties that are available for sale or lease are easily accessible for those looking to buy or rent in downtown Mesa. And then our events, which is not traditionally what DMA had done, but over the last 6 years, we built up a healthy event schedule. We really heard from the city and the businesses and the community that they wanted events in their community and their downtown. So we started all of our events from scratch, except Motorcycles on Main that we took over from another company. But a majority of these are self-sustaining and don't come from any funds from the city or from the property owners, but they pay for themselves. And then we also fund and participate with many other events in the downtown. Mary Main, we have a great partnership with the city to help provide those activities throughout the holiday season. And then I'll turn it over to Elisa for our budget and future.
Sure. So with this slide, it's just demonstrating that over the past few years, we've had a decrease in our budget, and we've still been able to maintain the same level of services consistently that we have in the years prior. So we've been able to do more with less funding, and all the while, we've been able to maintain a full event schedule, as demonstrated by our previous slide. Mayor Giles, you graciously came to our meeting yesterday and gave us the updates on all of the exciting things that are going on. It's just a great time. We're happy to be a great partner with the City of Mesa. We're really looking forward to what comes ahead. We're committed to continuing that partnership and providing the excellence and services that we're doing as we move ahead while our downtown grows and becomes a more vibrant destination downtown. We're going to be here, and we're happy to be a partner with you on that.
You're done.
Thank you very much. Questions? Yes, Chris.
David, thank you for the work that you and your organization do. Have you ever partnered with Visit Mesa on some of your marketing ventures or explored that option?
We have talked about some marketing options to do more of a collective with all those that may market in Mesa to do a cooperative with Visit Mesa, Dana Park, Superstition Springs, other areas that maybe we can pool our resources and do more of an overall marketing campaign. I know Mesa or Visit Mesa's focus is on outside of Mesa, but they do a very professional job that they could do some assistance with us in the local marketing.
Mr. Freeman.
Do you have any challenges there with your merchants, or, I mean, collectively, all your merchants are on board? What are your challenges you might have for the DMA that you might be looking to resolve in the future?
You know, we are constantly, working to try to please everyone, which is impossible. So we are constantly, working through, if we do an event, some people want the event where they're located, others don't want it where they're located, or some people want us to write more parking tickets, some people want us to write less. So we're constantly managing those differences of opinions, and we have a very quality board, and look at these things and take it from a board perspective of how we're going to handle them. One of the issues that we're working on that I failed to mention is we partnered with the city on a downtown navigator, which through Community Bridges, which is helping engage with the homeless and get them help and off the streets. And we've been doing that for several months now with great success. We still have a bit of an issue with those downtown, but she's been able to get some long-term homeless people off the streets and into services that they need. And so it's working, a program that's working out well. And we're always looking into the future on what we can do more efficiently, a better job at, best practices throughout the downtown industry.
Did you have a comment?
Nope, I'm just here to voice my support. I'm proud of what we've accomplished over these last 2 years. We were just chatting out front. Looks like the next 2 years are going to be really great. I expect to see great things as we move forward. So I think it's a really exciting time to be in the downtown.
Yeah, from the chatter that we hear, there could be a lot of great things happening in downtown. So if that happens, that'll increase a huge footprint for the DMA.
Thank you. And it was really, I appreciate the chance to come to your meeting yesterday. I got to say how I was extremely impressed. For those who weren't there, this is a very strong board, very engaged. And so Elisa and Dave, thanks for the great work you're doing. It's a strong organization. But what's equally impressive is the room was circled with really very impressive people that are applying to be on the board. So there's a lot of interest in this organization. I think you're doing a great job. I get continually compliments on how clean our downtown is. People from out of town or wherever, they say, you know what, I was driving around Mesa and it was kind of eerie how clean it was. And so that means a lot. I mean, I think that creates a nice vibe, and it means, and also the events. Thank you for partnering with us on a lot of events. I think people don't realize nearly every weekend or multiple times every weekend, there's something going on in downtown Mesa. You guys have gotten very good at putting those on. I'm glad the Navigator program came up. There's good news, bad news with the light rail. One of the challenges associated with light rail is an increased obvious homeless population, and we're struggling with how to manage that. And I think you guys could be and have been a critical part of that. You, with your relationships with the businesses and the fact you have people out and about all over downtown, coordinating our Navigator program with you guys seems like the best answer that I can see right now. So that's encouraging, and thank you for your help on that. So thank you. I know, so this is on the agenda. Occasionally, we just had to re-up your certification to get the assessments that allow you to function.
And there's a hearing on the 22nd for the assessment portion of that.
Okay.
And I just quickly want to follow up on the cleanliness. Our crew of guys deserves the credit. They're out there 6 days a week through the heat of the summer, out there at 5 in the morning. And we do sometimes hear, well, what does the DMA do for me? I know, you know, we try to pick up the trash for the businesses open to see it. So when our guys are out there 5 in the morning, sometimes we get the feedback and have to explain to them, well, it's picked up before you open your shop to see it. So we do make an impact, and they do a great job for us.
Great. Thank you very much. Council Jeremy, anyone have additional questions for DMA?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Great presentation. The next item on our agenda is item 3B, hear a presentation and provide direction on the city's sign code project. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Angelica Guevara with the Development Services Office, and I'm here to talk about a project we've been working on to update the sign code. I have Gordon Sheffield here to my right. He's our existing zoning administrator. He will be retiring at the end of next week after almost 31 years of service with the city. So this will be, well, possibly next week will be his last week.
Gordon is an institution. Your name reverberates all over town, Gordon. So I'm sure you'll be given a lot of zoning attorneys that are going to be having. That's no, Gordon. We'll take the appropriate opportunity to say goodbye to you. But it is worth noting that Gordon has been a big part. He's been the face and the voice of the city of Mesa, you know, all day, every day, all over town. So. And in a very positive way. So thank you, Gordon, for your great service.
Thank you. Put a banner up for him or something.
We'll put an illegal sign.
Okay. I might overlook that one.
Yeah,
like every 8 seconds.
Every 8 seconds.
Okay.
So the reason I mentioned that is because Gordon has mainly been working on this project for several years now. And I will be, and I'll explain why it has taken a while, but I will be taking over that project, which is why I wanted to mention that.
You're a brave woman.
Thank you. So I will be talking about the objectives of the update. I will talk about the proposed allowances for permanent signs and portable signs. I'll also go over a little bit of the public input we have received so far, and then I'll get into some recommendations that we have. So the two main objectives of updating the sign code is, first of all, to comply with a U.S. Supreme Court case against our neighbors to the south, the the town of Gilbert. In addition to that, we're also in a need to modernize the sign code. Sign code has not been updated since 1986, which is the time when Gordon Sheffield started working with the city of Mesa. So we do need to make it a little more user-friendly and also update it based on some of the changes that have happened in development in the last 30 years. So the main objective with updating the sign code is really to comply with that U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court issued their decision in June of 2015, And what that decision did was require sign regulations to not be based on the sign's content or message. So it really requires a complete redo of our code. Our neighbors, Tempe and the city of Flagstaff, have already adopted changes to comply with that court ruling. And we are in the same place as Phoenix, Gilbert, and Chandler, where we have started drafting changes and are working on changes that we'll be bringing forward. So the specific revisions that we're looking at in order to comply with the Reed decision was to change our sign classifications so that they are not based on message type. In addition to that, we need to ensure that we're not showing preference to one type of message over another, and in particular to our portable signs. If you looked at our existing regulations, they are solely based on the type of sign that was proposed. So we will be making changes to that in order to base those regulations on the sign form, the materials, and where those signs are placed. So what we're attempting to do is not limit the messages. We're trying to make sure that we do comply with the U.S. Supreme Court case ruling. And along with that, we're also looking to standardize portable sign sizes in order to comply with one of the criticisms of the court against the town of Gilbert. So some of the philosophy that we're moving forward with in the new regulations is to classify the sign forms. So to do that, we're using the materials, the structure of the sign, and the method of anchoring. So whether it's to the ground or onto the building. And then from there, we're looking at the location. Where is it placed? And after that, we're looking at the standards. So the number of signs that are allowed, the height of the signs, and then the area. So this slide here provides all of the allowed types of portable signs. We're moving forward with 6, and the first is the attached rigid sign, which is typically a plywood type of sign that is attached to a building. The next category is the detached rigid sign, which is typically also made of plywood, but it's attached to posts. The third type that we have is the yard sign, which is made of more or less durable type of materials that would then, so something like foam core that would then be attached to a stake into the ground. And then detached banners, which are self-explanatory, wall banners, and A-frames or sandwich board signs. So this next chart provides the allowances that we're proposing for single residence signs. So as an example, my house, which is on a lot that's less than 1 acre in area, would be allowed portable signs as long as the aggregate area of those signs did not exceed 12 square feet in area. I would be allowed 1 sign with a maximum area of 8 square feet, and I would be allowed to have a maximum of 2 signs per street front. So my house is on a corner lot, so I would be allowed 2 signs on each street frontage with a maximum of 12 square feet in area, and I could then have 2 signs that are each 6 square feet, or I could have 1 8 square foot and of 1 4 square foot sign. So just to provide you an example that you can all relate to. And then the specific allowed sign types that I would have would be the attached rigid, the detached rigid, and the yard sign. So this next chart here provides a summary of the proposed commercial allowances for portable signs. So for example, a drive-through restaurant that sits on an existing lot that is less than 1 acre in area would be allowed a maximum aggregate sign area of 32 square feet, maximum individual sign area of 32 square feet. So they could decide to put up 1 portable sign at 32 square feet, or the regulations would allow them to have a maximum of 3 signs. So if they chose to, they could have 3 10 square foot signs, for example. But the maximum height allowed would be 8 feet, and they would also be limited to the attached rigid, the detached rigid, or the A-frame or sandwich board signs on their property. So next, we'll talk more specifically about the proposed allowances for portable fabric signs. So without a special event within the commercial and industrial districts, commercial businesses would be allowed portable fabric signs that for a total of 30 days per year. In addition to that, the signs would be limited to a maximum of 8 feet in height and would be allowed at a maximum of 16 square feet in area. With a special event license, they would be allowed in all additional fabric signs and portable signs would be allowed in all districts. In addition to that, businesses that are out of the downtown area could also provide additional signage through a special event license. So if they were holding a special event on their property, they could, they would be allowed additional signage during that special event. Now, in the downtown area, we do have an unlimited number of special events that are allowed, so they would have additional allowances for those portable fabric signs. And as currently allowed within our code, anybody that processes a request for a special use permit could also have, be considered to have additional days or events on their site. So some of the potential effects that we do see with some of these changes to our portable sign regulations is that we do expect to see an increase in the number of portable signs being used. And that's because we're no longer able to restrict the signs based on their specific message. So in the past, we would be allowed, or businesses would be allowed to have a real estate sign, a development sign, or if it was a subdivision, they would be allowed a subdivision marketing sign. But since we're no longer going to be looking at the specific message type, we're going to be looking at the sign form and the placement of it. We do anticipate that the number of portable signs used will actually be going up. Now, we are looking to standardize our sign sizes. That was one of the criticisms that the U.S. Supreme Court had for the town of Gilbert, that they were basing or limiting sign sizes and areas based on the type of message. And so we're looking to standardize our sizes in order to have more consistency. So that does mean that some signs would be required to be a little bit smaller than the code previously allowed, but it also means that some portable signs will actually be allowed to be a little bit larger.
Angelica, a quick question. The photograph in the upper left-hand corner here, that's a very, we see that a lot. Signs that are placed in the right-of-way, kind of temporary type signs promoting everything under the sun. So under the proposed, is that currently within code? I mean, is the right-of-way fair game for anyone who wants to sell anything or communicate any kind of message? And if not, is the proposed new changes, will it then become okay?
Mayor Giles, council members, the current code does not allow portable signs to be placed within the right-of-way, and moving forward, we would keep that same allowance that signs are still not allowed within the right-of-way. They create a traffic hazard and clutter, and so we're looking to continue that regulation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Is that where the 15 feet comes in?
Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, that is correct. So our second objective to updating the sign code is to also help modernize the sign code. There have been a lot of changes in the last 30 years. Like I said, the sign code was last updated in 1986. And so we have seen changes to development. So for example, where grocery stores in the past ranged in size from 35,000 to 50,000 square feet, we have seen stores such as, big box stores such as Home Depots and Walmarts that are now substantially larger in area, where they're now anywhere up to 5 acres under roof. And so we have seen a need to change some of those sign regulations in order to address those larger scale developments. They're also set back further from the street, so they do warrant larger signs in order to be seen from the street. So that is one of the changes that we are proposing. We're also looking at changing the allowances for multiple tenant projects. Just because when they're in office districts, they have the same consideration or allowances right now as commercial projects, but we're looking to specify those to pad buildings and also office buildings in order to meet their specific needs. We're also adding an allowance for an administrative sign plan. So the Board of Adjustment has historically processed a lot of requests for comprehensive sign plans through special use permits. We've gone back and done an analysis of what was allowed as part of that, those allowances in the last 30 years, and taken a look at what people are requesting the most and trying to write the new regulations in a way that would allow it almost by right, but through an administrative or staff approval. As part of the update, we're also looking to update the design standards for signage. So specific changes to permanent signs are to increase the sign allowance for those multiple tenant offices. We have seen a need and a change in that offices are no longer just standalone. Sometimes the buildings are occupied by multiple tenants, and we were finding that our code was a little too restrictive, and so we are looking to modernize that in order to give them each individual sign allowances so that they don't have to come in and file a comprehensive sign plan, go through a hearing process. We would just write those allowances into the code to allow them to have their signage.
Question,
Mr. Freeman.
So you're simplifying the process for people to come in and get the sign code over the counter type? Is that what we're saying? I know this has been discussed for many years and having been privy to that, but I mean, that would simplify the Board of Adjustment's responsibilities by not going through the process. So your comments?
Mayor Giles, Councilmember Freeman, that is correct. The administrative sign plan would be processed by staff only, and it would not require having to actually go through a public hearing with the Board of Adjustment. So we are trying to simplify that and make it easier for business owners to get those signs
So it'll be
approved.
over the counter right there. They can apply for it.
Mayor,
Would it be long? I mean, give me a time frame. If I were to walk in over the counter and apply, then
Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, we're projecting that the staff review would be about 4 to 6 weeks on the high end.
The part of the project is two things. One is to try to address the by right signs so that there would be fewer requests for a sign plan, that the standard sign ordinance would address those issues. We're also trying to provide options for people so that when the standard sign plan or the standard sign ordinance, for whatever reason, doesn't address what they believe they would like, then they can come in either through the administrative sign plan process or through the comprehensive sign plan process. They still have those options. The standard sign plan process would give them what has traditionally been offered as approvals through the Board of Adjustment. We've kind of seen those and we've kind of averaged those a bit and said, well, if you can agree to this, then we don't need to go to a hearing. And so that it removes the notification and the time with the Board of Adjustment process and gives them something that's a little bit different than what the standard sign code would offer.
I guess, may I clarify my question? So I'm a small business owner and I decide I need to put a sign up on my buildings because I've changed ownership or whatever. Walk me through the process. It'd be simple for me to do that? And
in most circumstances, if you're leasing from an existing owner, the owner has already gone through either the comprehensive sign plan process or has already addressed their sign issues. And so there's a plan on file, and so it'd just be a matter of getting a permit. So in that case, yes, it would be simple. If you're a person who's building a project and you're looking to try to find out what your sign needs are for that, we're trying to address the code so that there's less of a need for you to go through a process.
well, that's what I like, you know, to simplify it for the small business owner because there are a lot of them in there that if they want to, I understand if you had a comprehensive sign package or plan on file, but if there needs to be a change, you want the process to be simple for that business owner and not drag it out.
Right.
Thanks.
So one of the other changes that we're proposing with the administrative sign plan options is specifically related to the commercial centers. So commercial centers typically have more than 400 feet of street frontage, and so the ones that do would be allowed to have one center identification sign at 14 feet in height or 14 feet tall and a maximum of 120 square feet in area. This is a change from our current regulations. Currently, we do have a cap on the maximum allowable sign height, and that's 12 feet and also 80 square feet in area. So the idea behind this is to allow, we have heard from the industry that they really would like to have one taller sign as an entry identification, but then along with that, we would also limit the height of the additional signs within the property to no more than 8 feet in height and also 50 square feet in area. So the idea is we will by right allow them to have one larger sign, but then the remainder of the signs would actually be a little bit smaller than what's currently allowed. And they have been very receptive to that idea. And as currently stands, they would still have an option if for whatever reason our existing regulations or our proposed regulations don't meet their needs, they can still apply for a special use permit for their comprehensive sign plan if they had unique needs that our code wasn't able to meet. as they do now.
I do have another question, sorry. So I'm driving down the freeway and I see the tall monument signs and everything. Is that an exception to the rule? I don't know if they're called monument signs. I forget the right name for them.
Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, those are freeway landmark monument signs, which actually fall under different regulations, not under the sign code.
Okay, so we're not addressing it during this time?
That's correct. We're not proposing to address that. So now on to public input. So we did start having some public input meetings with stakeholders during the months of April and May. This slide has a lot of the organizations that we have met with. There are still about 2 on the list that we're still going to be meeting with in the next couple of weeks. So, but we are currently undertaking that process. So some of the comments that we have received from some of those groups that we have met with is that they are requesting an increase to the maximum individual sign area for attached signs. What we're proposing is to maintain our current allowance for 160 square feet in area. For those wondering, what does 160 square feet in area generally look like? If you look at the signs that are over the entrance of the Home Depots in Mesa, that sign tends to always be right about 160 square feet in area, just to give you a visual. We've also received a request to shorten the transition rate for the electronic message display signs. Currently, the code allows those transition rates to happen once every hour, but historically, the Board of Adjustment has, in the last however long electronic message display signs have been around, they have allowed them to have those changes, those message changes happen every 15 seconds. And we took a look at what the city of Tempe and the Federal Department of Transportation and the Arizona Department of Transportation allow, and they're currently allowing 8 seconds for message changes, so we are proposing to move to that standard as well. We're also, just to highlight, one of the main increases in area and height is to those commercial signs, the center identification signs, to allow with the standard sign plan option, the one sign to be 14 foot tall and 120 square feet in area. That was one of the comments we received, and we are proposing that change to our code. Some of the additional comments that we received pertaining to fabric signs is that the residents are really asking for a prohibition of fabric signs, but the industry is asking for an increased allowance for the use of fabric signs. So what we're proposing is a restricted allowance for 30 days throughout the year so that businesses that have a need for those temporary fabric signs can use them throughout the year, but they would be limited to 30 days.
I have a question. So can they apply for a special use permit to get more than 30 days?
Mayor Giles, Councilmember Freeman, if they applied for a special event license, they would be allowed to have additional temporary signs on their property, or if they had a special event license, they would also be allowed additional time.
So I'm thinking about car washes that have the fabric signs out all the time, every day, advertising their businesses. So I made a note to that when I read through it. So how can they be in compliance with what you're saying if they're open every day of the week and they have fabric signs out and they're going to be pushed back from them? Or other businesses, not just car washes, but I'm sure there's other small businesses that like to use fabric signs?
So Mayor Giles, Councilmember Freeman, currently the code does have a big restriction on those temporary signs. They are only allowed under very specific conditions. So if there's, so like a banner sign would be allowed if they're under new management or new ownership or one of those specific criteria that's allowed in the code. So any other time that they are using them, if they don't have a special event license, they are actually prohibited. So they're being used without authorization. And so what we're looking to do with this change in the code is to allow them for a maximum of 30 days throughout the year.
And Mayor, Council, I think part of the answer too is since the court case against the town of Gilbert, our enforcement of the current sign code has kind of been put on hold because we couldn't enforce it with content the way it was written. So the examples you use, I mean, there's probably a lot of examples out there of things that will, now under this code, would change, and we would then have something we could actually enforce. Today, enforcing under the current code, we'd be in violation of the Supreme Court ruling in many cases. So maybe what you see and what we're proposing would change. We get a lot of complaints about the fabric signs, to your point. And it is really, it's a policy question of council. I mean, but I think we're trying to find a compromise between having it up year-round versus for some period of time. So, but we can work with whatever. This is just a recommendation based on the input we have from the community and
the idea
businesses.
here is that the fabric signs would be used to celebrate a sale or a special promotion, something along that line, new cars coming out, you know, new model year cars coming out, those kinds of things, as opposed to being an everyday type of thing to try to draw business, because then part of the issue with that, we're getting to the question of sign clutter, because it's not just this car wash, then it's every other business can put up the fabric signs also at the same time, and then you get nothing but streets that are lined with these kinds of fabric signs.
Well, I guess where I'm coming at too, I think in all of our districts, we see fabric signs as we drive around, and we know they're not in compliance, especially when this new recommendations come out, and then staff goes out and it enforces the compliance issue. All of us are going to get pushback about whether, well, why can't, I've had them for years, now you're enforcing the law. And I think it's good, maybe we had that discussion. I think 30 days per year is a little light. And I'd like to know what that segment of the business industry would prefer. I'm sure they'd prefer every day, but.
Some would, yes.
Yeah. And
we've heard, and there's another slide that'll talk about that a little bit too. But we've heard increases up to 45 days too.
Well, I think it won't be enough, but that's just my opinion, so we can cover that topic later. But I just want to have that discussion about the banners, because they're everywhere.
One of the other comments that we also received was a request by the Home Builders Association to have larger subdivision marketing signs. But with having to address the ruling from the Supreme Court in that we need to be standardizing our sizes of our signs, we're actually having to reduce the area of those signs. And so what we're proposing is a maximum of 32 square feet, and that's one of the specific signs that you will see the area reduced in, just to try and address that case from the Superior Court. And we're trying to avoid showing a preference for one message type over another. So moving forward, we are proposing to release a draft of the sign code in the next month for public input. After that, we will be moving into the summer with study sessions and hearings with the Planning and Zoning Board, and then hoping to come back to council in the fall for action. So with that, Mr. Sheffield and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
You know, I don't have any.
Really? Okay. Mr. Freeman's good. Mr. Whitaker, anyone else have questions regarding this item? Okay. Yeah, we might have lost Jeremy.
I'm here. I don't have any questions. Sorry, it took me a while to get off mute.
No, thank you. Any questions, Jeremy?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is great. I think we're in good company with needing to redo our sign code along with the rest of the country, given the Gilbert Supreme Court case. So I think we're all anxious to see this happen. I know there's a lot of frustration everywhere until we get this figured out. So thank you for suffering through this period of time, and I appreciate all the outreach you're doing with the business community. So we'll look forward to this coming back to us on the timeline that you just shared with us. The next item on our agenda is information pertaining to the current job order contracting projects. Council, any questions regarding any of those items? Hearing none, the next is to hear reports on meetings and conferences attended. Mr. Thompson.
I was in Washington last week, the first part of the week, D.C. The first part of the week, I was there on behalf of our natural gas utility, attending the American Public Gas Association conference. It's their government affairs committee that I'm on, and so we had the opportunity to touch base with our congressional delegates and their staff on some of the issues that were important to our natural gas utility here in Mesa, and how some of the items can save our our citizens' dollars. For example, the continue the tax exemption on the municipal bonds, energy efficiency, and as well as the low-income home energy tax credit for the fixed and low-income folks in our city. And the last portion of the week, I spent with a number of our law enforcement community with the National Police Week. And so that was kind of a somber event, but exciting at the same time. So thank you.
Great, thank you for doing that. Any other reports? Hearing none, Mr. Brady, what's the schedule hold for us? Was there an Eagle Scout experience? Oh, thank you. Mr. Freeman, Mr. Freeman and I attended our alma mater, was that yesterday? Whitman Elementary School, 2 days ago. There was a great Eagle Scout project. That's a great school, got a great principal, Ms. Erickson, that's retiring this year. But just a great example of another good Eagle project where a lot of kids who will benefit from having books received books at Whitman. So thank you for helping with that, Mr. Freeman. Any other announcements? Mr. Brady, what's the schedule hold for us?
Mayor, just a reminder, we have Monday, May 22nd, we'll have our study session and council meeting on that day.
Thank you. The next item is to convene an executive session for the purposes of discussing a pending litigation case. Is there a motion to move to executive session? And a second? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will convene an executive session.